with our special guest today, Rebecca Donato, who I've known for, I don't know, 15 years at least, from through the Leadership Academy that we've been part of through Leading Age and travel in the same circles. And so when the topic of well-being came up to be discussed, I could think of no one better than her to share with us the work that she's doing in the world and a bit about well-being in your organization. So welcome, Rebecca, officially.
Thank you. Thanks, Denise. It's really nice to be here.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about sort of what you're doing these days, which you've filled me in on and is fascinating. And I know that people are going to just take so much from hearing what you're doing. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you got into it and all that. But what is it that you're doing these days?
Sure. Thanks so much. Well, I feel very blessed to be doing, have found myself in the work that I've been involved with the last couple of years. So Keeper Senior Life, which is the organization I work for, is based here in the Boston area. They're the largest aging services system in New England. And a good number of years ago, going back over a decade, they actually partnered up with the Kendall Corporation to create an innovative coaching platform called Vitalize 360. And the idea way back when was to pair residents of senior living communities up with a health coach who would meet with them on a regular basis and give them some time and space to actually set wellness goals. And the program was used in a number of communities around the country and had been very well received by the residents who had participated in it. But they came to me a couple of years ago saying, you know, we're at this place where we're seeing the market change. We're seeing that older adults coming into particularly life plan communities were looking for something a little different. And they wanted to take these really powerful conversations that were happening between the residents and the coaches and look at how that kind of exploration into wellness and well-being, that kind of health activation conversation could be expanded into more of a culture. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that emerged out of those conversations is that the coach who got to partner with the resident was really learning a lot about what mattered most to the resident. What were the things in their life that were working well? What were some of the challenges they were having? What were their personal strengths? Like what was energizing them? What were the dreams and goals they still had? But then also, you know, what was it that might be barriers to living the life that they really wanted to live? And so as the coaches became aware of these things, the organizations were recognizing like we can do so much more if we actually take these kinds of what matters conversations and make them part of our culture. So when I was hired a number of years ago, before COVID, the goal of the work that we were going to do was to really take it from coaching modality into culture building. And so we've had a little bit of a sidebar with obviously COVID, as everybody has, but that's basically the work we're doing now, is working with organizations to bring a toolkit of practices, education, and training to help cultures really support the whole person well-being of people. So it's gone beyond coaching intervention and more about helping organizations have a conversation with every resident who moves in about the things that matter to them, and basically giving them the benefit of a well-being partner who meets with them on a at least a biannual basis to check in about what's working well and how can we support meaning and purpose in your life. So we also are working on creating more tools to cultivate well-being culture, helping team members be connected to practices and education, ways of learning about what makes a good life, what are the building blocks of well-being. So we work in both like a consulting and training capacity at this point, and it's very fulfilling work. It's like so meaningful because you really get to connect with people around the things that matter most to them.
Yeah. So what are some of the building blocks of well-being for any individual? I mean, I would imagine it doesn't vary from whether it's a resident or a team member? What are some of those building blocks that you just referred to?
Sure. It's a great question. I think it's something that we want to help the senior living field become more aware of. I think we all know about the 8 dimensions of wellness, right? At this point, we've heard a lot about it, but there's actually been so much work in the science of positive psychology and human flourishing. And so we've learned a lot about these building blocks of well-being. If you don't mind, I'd love to use a couple slides, some visuals to actually share a little bit about, because what we've done is we've really tried to anchor our model on positive psychology and human flourishing science. And there are a number of different models out there around well-being. And a lot of the context depends on, or a lot of which model you choose depends on the context. So we chose a model that we felt, to your point, is as applicable to team members as it is to residents.
Yeah.
And we use this model sort of as the centerpiece or the core framework for how we design every single practice or intervention and how we educate and train. So I'll go ahead and pull up just a visual or two that will help us look at that. And the model that we've kind of hung our hat on, pardon me as I scroll a little bit here. Pardon me, let's see. We want to get to.
He's like, no, no.
This one.
Sometimes you do this, it's like always when you're in the middle of doing
there we go.
showing your screen, it's always a challenge.
It's always fun. So the model we've hung our hat on is one that was developed by a gentleman named Dr. Martin Seligman out of the University of Pennsylvania. And he's known as the father of positive psychology.
Yes.
So he's a clinical psychologist. Yeah. And basically said he was tired of studying why people go from 0 to -60. He wanted to find out what were the ingredients of folks who were living, you know, the 0 to 60 in life. When people were flourishing and thriving, what was the magic behind that experience? And through, you know, over a decade of research, he and his colleagues at Penn were able to kind of narrow it down to actually 5 pillars. So the H is an add-on to Martin Seligman's model. But let me speak. You see here, PERMA is the framework that we've used, but I'm just going to go to the next slide. So the first one is positive emotions. A building block of having a good life is having an opportunity to experience positive emotions on a regular basis. And that's not just happiness and joy. It can be things like awe and wonder. It can be equanimity and contentment, a sense of peace and calm. Like, these are positive emotions, feeling comforted, feeling a sense of connectedness. And different people will connect with different positive emotions more naturally. Some people are naturally connected to humor. And so that would be a positive emotion they could kind of hang their hat on. Other people may be more serious, but for them, like, maybe they're more contemplative, in a sense of like inner peace is a positive emotion for them that really is an anchor. The second pillar,
sorry, I'm so happy to hear the awe piece, because my top personal values, awe and wonderment is one of them. And so when you said, wonderment, but it's just like, I just went for a walk and, you know, I'm looking at trees. I see it all the time. And I'm just like, it's unbelievable. They're that, I don't know how you say, the banyan, whatever, those trees that have the roots that start falling, and then the root hits the ground and it starts another tree. But I was looking at this tree that's like, you know, over the front of like 3 houses, because its roots have dropped probably, you know, over, I don't know, over 100 years. But anyway, so that's the stuff that I love to do, is walk around and just find sometimes big things like that. And sometimes it might be a team, like, how is that plant growing in that little crack in the sidewalk? I find a lot of it in nature.
Yes.
Piece. Yeah. So sorry.
Absolutely. And, you know, no, I'm so glad you shared that, because I think that, I mean, first of all, you just brought up a very good example. Like, as a leader, one of the things that is really helpful to us is to actually know what our strongest and driving values are. So, like, actually to know that awe is one of your core values it's like power, right? Because our values, when we are aligned with our values, when we can tap into them, when we are spending our energy really expressing them, we actually get energized.
Yes.
And so, and if we can't be connected to our top values, we can be depleted.
Yes.
But most of us are going through life like we have no idea what they are.
100%.
You know, and they're,
yes, that has changed my life, knowing those values. And I'll tell you, I do exactly like when I'm feeling I won't say negative emotion anymore because all emotions are good, but when I'm feeling a way I don't want to be feeling, I look, because now I'm like, it's an indicator. It's not a bad thing. It's an indicator. So I'm feeling stressed, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling sad, or whatever. But I look and I try to figure out where in my values am I going wrong right now that is causing that piece to be. And sometimes it would be, let's say, I haven't gone for a walk in a while. I've been stuck in my office. And so I haven't had the opportunity for awe and wonderment moments. Or it might be another one, mine is illuminating, like lifting people up. And so, and not so much now, but like during COVID, I had to be very intentional about how I was going to connect with a person and work on illuminating, because you were so, by yourself and not around other people and so forth. So what you just shared really has helped me, being aware and then being able to say, I'm missing that, or I need to do more of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you said something also very powerful that I want to underscore, which is that no emotion is a bad emotion. Emotions are messages to us. They are very, very powerful messages that can tell us, are we experiencing coherence in our being? And when we experience negative emotions, it's telling us that there's something that is not in alignment, and we need to pay attention to it. And we need to, as you did, like, where is this coming from? And I need to fix it. And we can get used to feeling those negative emotions and not paying attention to them, and not realizing they're pointing us to resolve something, But it's interesting because this leads us into the next pillar of Seligman's model, which is, the word engagement can make you think, oh, just being engaged. But actually, if you dig into his science, it's about being engaged in activities or causes that are connected to your personal values and your strengths. So if you deeply believe in a cause or in a certain set of values, the more you engage in that, or if you have a particular strength, the more you get to use it, the better you will feel. Why? Because our brains, there's an interesting kind of brain state that they call the state of flow. Have you heard about this? Being in flow state, right? And it's this beautiful balance between ease and effort, where we're working just enough to be challenged, but not so much that we feel overwhelmed. And we get into a place where we actually lose sense of time. So for people who, might play instruments or do art, or even when you're reading, or perhaps, I don't know, make people who are graphic designers making PowerPoint, whatever, or a website, you get lost in time because you're so deeply engaged in something that's rewarding. And so engagement in things that matter is the second pillar. And for people who don't know, for people who may not have had a chance to actually explore their values, there's a really cool tool, you may have come across it already, called the Values in Action Assessment. And it was also created out of UPenn, Dr. Seligman and Dr. Christopher Hoffman, I think his name was. It's been used by millions of people, so there's tons and tons of evidence base. And it takes 24 universal human values. You answer a free, survey, so to speak, and it will tell you, like, what are your top 5 to 10 driving values? Because those are essentially your strengths. And you can look at them and get a sense, like, gee, am I living in the, am I able to express these? Am I in an environment, in a culture that honors these values? Yeah. And then when you look where you're ranked more low, if you have to tap into those strengths where you're low, and you have to tap into them a lot, you can feel very depleted. And it helped me so much with my career. It really, like, doing that evaluation really helped give me some direction about where I needed to fine tune my path. So just a little, like, how-to tangible. The third pillar is about relationships. And so we all know about the science of, socialization is very important to health. But the idea here is, relationships that really nourish us and support us and give us a sense of belonging and connection are very important. It doesn't have to be, 15 people. It can be one very meaningful relationship that supports us. And sometimes our relationships can be more depleting. So we have to really look at the quality, right?
I love the qualifier there. Sorry, the person.
What?
Thankfully, it says that elicit feelings of belonging, support, and positive emotions, because there might be personal connections that don't, to your point. So I love the qualifier.
Yeah. It's really important, well, I'll talk about it in a little bit, the idea of good company and good energy. And then meaning is this idea of having a purpose in life, or a sense of focus in one's life that's beyond oneself. I mean, let's face it, if every day all we're doing is thinking about our own self, our world can become very, very small, and we can become kind of lost in our own little cycle of ourselves. And so when we expand our focus beyond our smaller selves into the larger world, and when we focus on caring for others, any kind of other being or any kind of other higher cause, it gives us a sense of contentment and satisfaction. I think all of us in aging services, we're in this work because we know that, right?
Yeah.
The fifth one, I think it's fascinating for us to really pay attention to in the work we do, working with older adults, and that's the domain of achievement and accomplishment. And the reason I think this is so important is that, I know it's changing in terms of, sort of the psychographics, but we've had a tendency to look at, older age as a time of like retreating, right? And at the end of the day, people need to feel a sense of accomplishment no matter what their age.
Yes.
Like, even for folks who might be in stages of dementia and they're aphasic, they still have a human need to have some sense of accomplishment. So what if we could think about, in the work that we do, I like to think of it, in addition to ADLs, activities of daily purpose, right? Mm-hmm. Is there something that we can do when we are interacting with the older adults to give them a sense of accomplishment and achievement in their day? Some people we don't need to do that for, right? But I think paying attention to the fact that human beings need that at all ages. And then the last pillar has been added on to Seligman's PURE model, which is health, because some people have looked at his model and said, well, you can have all those things, but if you have bad health, you're not going to have a great experience of well-being. And yet some people can have poor health and still actually have well-being. So the way they define health in this model is like living one's life with a level of function, physical wellness that you need to be able to live a good life for you, right? If you look at these 6 categories, these building blocks of well-being, every person is going to prioritize these a little bit differently. So I think about like my mom and dad, they're my little case study, right? For my mom, her driving pillar are relationships. She needs people and connection like air.
Yeah.
My dad needs achievement. My dad has to get 3 things done every day or it's not a good day. So when we are coming into relationship with residents, coming into relationship with our colleagues, can we pay attention to the things that light them up? Can we pay attention to the positive emotions that they tend to express or resonate with? Or can we pay attention to the things that they seem to feel satisfied when they get to do, or the way that they come in a relationship? If we pay attention, we can start to observe these things.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, it's knowing those things for another person, for a resident or a team member that we're working with. And the fact is that most people don't even know it themselves, right? So they don't even realize themselves.
I know.
The expectation, that my supervisor is going to know this, or my team members, but yet the value in personally knowing it, because I mean, it sounds like you too, and just the difference it's made in your life when you're aware of it. Sometimes I see in these, different groups of people that work in our field, things like, I got to get out of this field. I don't know what I want to do. And, people just start sharing, go work for an insurance company and go work for this and that. And it's like, wait, stop. Like, what is important to you? Because you might find you go work for an insurance company, your hours are better, but your sense of meaning and purpose and relationships and all that you have in aging services is very different. And so, just making decisions from a point of having that, I guess, data is so incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, to that point you're making about like knowing what matters to you, it's really the essence of our model. And we often use this metaphor of, every day when you wake up, you get an energy bottle and it's finite. And, throughout your life, the size of the energy bottle will change depending on what's happening. And if you want to live your best possible life, you have to really be aware of where your energy goes. And are you using it on the things that matter to you? And are you using it in ways that actually you're filling it up by what you're spending it on, right? Rather than just depleting it. And so we find that is a powerful metaphor. Sometimes we actually do these tactile exercises where we'll have, we'll give people a clear jar and the marbles in different colors will represent different things, where they can think about, where does my time go? Where do I want my time to go? So, our part of like the toolkit we've created it's a lot of it is experiential learning. How do you help team members actually think about these pillars in their own life? Because in order to honor residents in this way and to see them in this way and to serve them with this kind of lens, they have to think about their own lives like that first.
Yes.
So a lot of emphasis on helping people take a step back and reflect on themselves. Well-being, I mean, this is the difference, I think, in some ways between wellness and well-being. And we try to highlight this. They're connected, but they're slightly different. Wellness is more focused on maybe like the external, like maximizing your physical abilities, living without pain, living as independently and as free in your body as you can, right? So good food and good nutrition and going to the doctor and following what you need to manage, health issues. But the well-being, it's much more internal. It's much more looking inward, and you can't see it in the same way. But those two components are inextricably connected, and they both need attention. And I think in our field, what we need more of are tools and emphasis on the well-being to partner up with the emphasis that's been around on wellness.
Yes. And to your point, the sense of even people caring for, supporting, serving residents and clients and whatever you call the people that are receiving services in your organization, the people doing that work, for them as well to be thinking about those things. And so I guess tell a little bit sort of why particularly it's this topic of well-being is important in the field in aging services.
Well, of course I'm biased, but I actually think it's a strategic imperative. I think in order for aging services organizations to really address the talent shortage and issue, they have to make well-being as much of a focus as any other functional area and functional specialty. I mean, if I ruled the world, there'd be a VP of well-being in every major aging services organization, just like VP finance.
Yes.
And you can't just put it in the HR bucket. It's a specialty. Like, as you know better than anybody, building culture is a specialty. And if it's everybody's job, it's nobody's job yet. Everybody, like all the leaders need to buy into it, but you also need expertise, and it's a core competency that has to be developed. So I think from a perspective strategically of attracting good people, of keeping them well, but more importantly, or I shouldn't say more importantly, also, we have to care for the people that care for the people.
Yes.
So we can't expect that the people who are doing this really good but hard work can actually do that in a whole person way and serve the residents if they are not cared for. And I know this, like we talk about this all the time, but in order to deliver that, you need as an organization to invest in that. And it's not easy. So you need an expert or two, or, to come in and really support the development of practices that will cultivate that kind of well-being culture. I think the other thing that's really important strategically for aging services organizations to think about the changing customer. Like they're coming to the door, at least in more market rate environments, with high expectations about being really seen as a whole person with lots of continued visions for meaning and purpose in their life. They're not just looking, as for housing and good food and nice amenities. They want to come to a place that has a sense of meaning and purpose. And so that has to be alive. And that has to be part of the value proposition. And you can't fake that with some good marketing collateral.
Yes. Yes.
Or a busy calendar. And so, I think from a strategic perspective, both the change in the customer and then the talent are two reasons. I also think it's important, we are a human services field, right? So if we're here to help people have a good human experience in their later years, we ought to come to the table knowing something about what it means to live a good life, right? We have to know that what we're bringing to the table as leaders, we're bringing a healthy, whole, fair, and balanced version of ourselves because we're trying to help other people live their best life. And so I think for me as a yoga practitioner, I happen to think about this a lot from a perspective of energy, right? If you think about, anything in the manifest world is really an expression of energy, okay? And our everything we see, including ourselves, energy is movement, transformative energy, energy of stability, potential energy. And at the end of the day, every interaction that we have with other people, everything we do is an exchange of energy. And I think of leaders, I think of one of our jobs energetically is to be a good channel. We have to be a channel for good energy to the people who are serving the people we serve, right? We have to give our team members comfort, love, encouragement, support. And we can't be a good channel. Like if our channels are leaking or things are going sideways because there's big knots in our channel, like if we're not whole, if there's not integrity in our being, then we can't be a good channel. And so I think one of the most important pieces of well-being for leaders is just like showing up, being able to give that good positive energy because it's palpable.
Yes.
It's palpable. And what people need right now is feeling like they're coming into a place where they can be fed and fortified and nourished to do really hard work, right? But also feel the satisfaction and the contentment, and that comes from connection and belonging. But if we're exhausted and we're tapped, we can't be a good channel. That's not the energy we're going to give. So anyway, I think a lot about I think about it from that perspective because that's really a lot of what yoga focuses on is how do we manage energy in a very fluid and stable way.
No, and it's so important. And I think first of all, again, people probably don't think about it much. And the other piece is, I think sometimes people are fooling themselves. I just worked with an organization recently that, the leaders are really upset about something, they're like, well, we're like Disney here. We say it behind the scenes, but it doesn't go out front. But it does go out front, because I walked into the place and I was like, whoa, there's like a black cloud here. You could feel the heavy energy. You could feel that black cloud, and there's no way that's not impacting the rest of the and we know it is, because we saw the results of their culture. Culture, I should say. So it's impacting. And so the ability for people to think about these things and to think about what they're bringing to the table. I was just having a conversation with a leader today who is a friend, and we were just talking about how, the more you uncover about yourself, the more you take the time to be intentional about yourself, and the better you show up in the world. It's not only for you, it's for every one of your team members. And we were even talking about, his family at home. I'm like, even the family at home is going to appreciate you doing this work, because it's impacting them as well.
Absolutely. 100%.
So tell me a little bit about what are some things that people could do, some like tangible strategies that to improve organization for themselves or for their team?
Well, I'm trying to think if I'd want to start with the team first. I think, well, I'll start with the leader, I think. Because it really does start with leadership, right? Everything rolls down. And so, as a leader, it's very easy, I think, to get pulled into this narrative of, I don't have time to take care of myself. But I have this sort of like 3-prong framework about well-being for leaders. I think, first of all, it's self-knowledge and self-awareness. You just kind of pointed to that. You have to know yourself. We all think we know ourselves well, but actually, a lot of what we think we know about ourselves is a projection of what either other people have somehow reflected back to us, or what we think we should be in the eyes of other people, or some kind of comparison of ourselves vis-a-vis others. And so when we start doing the work of really having awareness of self, meta-awareness, this is where like contemplative practices come in so handy, where we can actually start watching the way our mind works, or knowing our values, or knowing our real strengths, and also knowing like what we're really not good at. Like just being able to say like, I am not good at this. I either need to find someone else on the team, or I need to change maybe the kind of work I'm doing, because I'm not wired up like that. And I had a personal experience like that. So I can say, I thought I knew myself, but I had kind of a reckoning in my life where I had to really like figure out like, who am I really? Right? So self-knowledge and self-awareness, self-regulation. So we have to find a way to, like, we have stuff coming at us all the time as a leader. Lots of emotions, lots of ideas, lots of demands. And we have to figure out a way that we can regulate ourselves so that what we are putting out, going back to the channel, is energy that is helpful, supportive, and fortifying to others. And lastly, we need self-care. So how do we do this? Self-knowledge, self-regulation, and self-care. I think that you have to have a plan for yourself. How are you going to take care of yourself, right? Like, you have to know what you need to know yourself, to manage yourself, and to really do the self-care. So what I would start with, I would think about routines. Routines are really important, because if you have a daily routine, if you have a routine, some things you might do daily, some things you might do weekly, sometimes you might do on the monthly. What it does is, number one, it creates a sense of consistency that's important for stability. Okay. It creates a sense of, I did this yesterday. When I do it today, I feel different. Why do I feel different? You can learn a lot when you have regulation. Thirdly, the body likes regulation. It likes to know, I'm going to eat at this time, I'm going to sleep at this time, I'm going to do my meditation at this time, I'm going to take my walk after lunch at this time. And so I think some of it is coming up with a reasonable, consistent routine just to provide yourself with self-care. I also think about, from a well-being perspective as a leader, having constant reinforcements of your why. We get pulled in a lot of directions, right? If we keep our laser focus on our why, it will bring us back. It will bring us back, right? So sometimes for people that could be visual, like whether it's your little vision board or it's a couple things on your desk or it's on your screen to remember your why. When you get up every morning before you come into work, can you think about, who am I here to serve and what am I here to do? Big picture. I'm here to be a light to the lights. You know, I'm here to reflect back strengths in other people. Like, super simple headline about your why. And keep reinforcing that, because that connection to your why, when you get pulled in a lot of directions, it's gonna be like an anchor. It's gonna bring you back in, right? And remind you that you've got to stay connected to that you. I think self-reflective practices are super important on the regular. That could be, at the end of the day, 3 things that stood out as high points that you'd like to do better, that you did well. Like, it could be journaling every Saturday over your coffee when you're home. It could be, you know, at the end of your day, you take a 15-minute walk and you're digesting. Like, you have to have some kind of practice for self-reflection to be able to cultivate that meta-awareness. It's nice to say meditation. It sounds, everybody wants to do meditation, but it's not very easy when you're busy, and sometimes it can actually be harder. So I think about sometimes active self-reflection, and that could be journaling or moving while you're thinking. You know, for me, it's why I love yoga, because I can go inward, but I'm moving. And then another effective strategy, I think, for well-being, and I know this sounds super simple, but it's just, I don't know, for some reason it's like overwritten. You have to take a break and eat some good food and get sleep. Like, if you don't take a break for lunch and stop and nourish yourself and stop working, if you're having meetings through lunch, you're sending terrible messages, number one. But you, as yourself, need to fortify your body with energy, and you have to eat good food and get rest. Like, simple things like that. So I know it's a little bit of a hodgepodge, and some of it might sound very basic, but it really is important to make your self-awareness, regulation, and self-care a priority to serve others. So I'll stop there because I said a lot of stuff.
I was on mute because my dog Tiny Tim was barking. You're inspiring me. I'm like, okay, I am going to block on my calendar time for lunch, because it's true. It's like 4 o'clock and I'll be like, oh, I didn't eat. Or like, I was just eating a banana, right? When we got on the call together, I was like shoving a banana down my throat, right? Trying to get that some food in me.
Yep.
So that,
yep.
You know, blocking that. I've gotten so much better about my sleep. That's been much more, I would say, militant about my sleep. But that piece, you're inspiring me to think. So it is the simple stuff, but we're so bad at the simple stuff.
We're so bad at the simple stuff. And the ironic thing is that I think, you know, I do, like, outside of this job, like, all my free time is studying functional medicine and biohacking. I'm an Ayurvedic health counselor. Like, I'm deep into the kind of, you know, mind-body healing world. And at the end of the day, most of our health issues come down to really simple things. We don't drink enough water. We don't get enough sunshine. We don't move our bodies enough. We don't eat good food. We don't even know what food is anymore in modern life. Like, you know, and so we don't cook for ourselves because we don't have time. And like, the relationship we have with those things, it's really critical. It's just like the pillars of this is going into the wellness category, but you have to have a good mind and a good body.
Yes.
So they're connected, right? So if all you do is, focus on the body, but you're not paying attention to the mind and vice versa, there's going to be an imbalance. It's finding this happy medium where you can care for both. And going back to, I'll just mention, like, as in the study of Ayurveda, it's the oldest life science, it's the oldest science of health and healing on the planet. It predates Chinese medicine. It's all about regularity in the routine, eating at the same time, sleeping at the same time, making sure there's a balance of movement and rest. The body, the human being, wants regularity in the body and mind because it can anticipate, the body's systems can anticipate what's coming. And we can even think about that. We can extract that and think about culturally, what do our team members need? Our team members need for psychological safety in the workplace, they need to know what they can rely on, right?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to come to work and have the same boss every day with the same expectations? Or is it going to be like a different thing? And so we can see that both in the mind and the body, like, humans want that sense of knowingness. And so I think about that a lot in well-being and strategies for kind of cultivating, self-care routines.
Yeah. I had never thought about that. That regularity piece of waking, sleeping, eating, and so forth. But it is true. I mean, it helps so much with routines. Like, that you're doing this, and it's almost this comfort. I was reading something recently that said, like, our world has gotten so used to our nervous systems being so dysregulated. We're used to, like, chaos all the time, that it doesn't even feel strange. It actually feels strange when we're not in chaos, right? If I'm not doing something, it feels like I have to be doing something. And but it's really enlightening for me personally to kind of hear about that. That's a simple thing, well, depending, right? And there's all different factors in your life. For me personally, it should be pretty simple. There's factor of I travel sometimes, or somebody's got maybe a baby that's waking them up all night, whatever, like, things are going to fall into that sense of how much can we intentionally at least do that piece of introduce consistency. Anything I didn't ask you about that you want to share?
I think
we had so many questions. I don't think we did one of them because we just had a conversation.
Yeah. No, I think that I guess there are two things I'd love to leave you with. One is I've been thinking a lot about this, and one of the things, and it kind of goes back to the whole nervous system conversation, right? There's a fascinating man named Dr. Stephen Porges, and he developed something called the polyvagal theory. And the whole idea is really understanding how all of our behaviors as human beings are really the result of they have a physiological, it's coming from the body. It's coming from the fact that our nervous systems are always, like, evaluating the environment for safety or threat. And what happens and human beings we co-regulate with each other. So we're tribal people. Human beings need to be with other human beings to feel a sense of safety, right? So we need this connection. And what happened in COVID is, obviously, number one, we were isolated. So we were taken away from that connection. And then when we were with people, we were afraid that we were going to be harmed by them, right? So our nervous systems got very disrupted by COVID, even on top of our already stressful modern life. So that we're in this sort of, kind of fight or flight mode all of the time. And part of what we can do to heal ourselves is creating opportunities to be reconnected to people, this, like, idea of co-regulating by being connected, in a sense, feeling a sense of safety with other human beings. We need connection and belonging as people. And so I think this whole conversation we've been having about DEI is very interesting, because in some ways, the most important part of it is the belonging.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, any form of suffering comes from separation. Human beings need to feel connectedness. And so as we think about our own well-being, or we think about what we're doing for the team members that we're serving or the residents we're serving, what can we do to create a sense of connection and belonging? Or what are we doing that's not creating that? And so when I think about like what I need in my own life to feel a sense of safety and to have my nervous system regulated, I've become much more aware of what makes me feel a sense of connectedness and belonging. And I do more of making sure I'm in those environments or engaged in those activities. And I'm more aware of how important it is, you know, in the workspaces to create that sense of belonging and invitation. So that just feels important to say, because I think that the whole world is like healing from COVID. And I really believe belonging and connection is like the medicine.
That's so incredible. I'm just thinking about, you know, how so many different fields, I have friends work in all different fields, and people sort of are just all saying the same thing, which is like, I've done whatever this work is, like 30 years or whatever. I've never in my life seen people be so mean, so angry, just showing up sort of at their worst, like whether it's you're traveling and it's people like, you know, the hotel desk clerk is saying like, my gosh, like people these days are just like whatever, or in healthcare where you see, I mean, it's sort of universal, it almost seems. And that's interesting and makes a lot of sense to me, what you just shared about this sense of, you know, we're even more dysregulated in the sense of we need connection. We couldn't have connection. Connection was bad. And like, you know, what, like in our bodies are like, what the heck is going on? And what do I do? And you know, and it doesn't bring out the best in most people. So yeah. Oh, that's really-
And it's really fascinating. If you can listen to Dr. Stephen Porges, he gets into this whole, like, you saw it sort of explode in 2020, where suddenly people couldn't talk to each other anymore. Everything was very elevated. There was so much vitriol around everything. And it's because in some ways, according to him and his theory from that framework, that we were on high alert. We were feeling a sense of threat. Right. And so we're actually acting that out in ways we didn't realize are coming from our nervous system. Right. And so the whole idea with his theory is like, you can actually enhance the way your so you have the fight or flight side of your nervous system, and then you have the rest and repose. And in a healthy nervous system, you come to homeostasis, you go into one, then your body comes back. Well, a lot of us, like, we can't get into that. But you can fix that. You can evolve that over time with practices that increase what they call the vagal tone. So how do you do that? It's things like laughter, focused breathing, extending the exhale longer than the inhale, singing, chanting. Those are things that do that, right? You're exhaling longer than you're inhaling. Prayer, meditation, like all of these things actually help the nervous system get back to become stronger. And I'm a geek. I have an Oura ring. I like measure my heart rate variability, right? Which is an indicator of your nervous system's like tone. But I think, you know, in the workplace, it's little things like, can we take a 5-minute breathing break? Can we take 10 minutes for a short guided meditation to think about one resident who we love deeply and think about the things we admire about them and how fortunate, or what we've learned from them. Like, just taking moments to allow ourselves to get recentered and re-regulated, and showing up in practice in the workplace to do that are ways I think we can bring that in. The last thing I would just mention is that well-being isn't going to happen by one person. So you have to find, as an organization, a way to educate people about these building blocks, to engage them in ways that are meaningful, and how the frontline folks and how the people at the highest levels are going to be engaged might look different. Sometimes it might look the same, but you have to have a strategy at every level for what meaningful engagement looks like. And then you have to reinforce it. So any kind of transformational programming, I feel like there's this bucket of education, activation, and reinforcement. And if you get the right person on the bus in your organization to help develop a strategy for that, and then your team on board, there is a way that you can actually consistently bring these practices and these tools into the workplace. And over time, it's gonna, as you said, it's gonna feel a lot different. When you walk in to a space, you'll feel it, if that's the norm. We actually are launching in 24 a pilot where we've created a well-being theme for every month that our organizations that belong to Vitalize 360 will focus on in programming and education. So January is all about cultivating a joyful life. February is about spreading kindness and compassion. March is about self-care. April is about humor and play. And so if every month there is an opportunity to either learn about it, practice it, celebrate it, it's a way of bringing it forward in a more organic way. So
yeah. Oh, I love
a little bit of the how-to.
Yeah, the intentionality around that. Wonderful. Rebecca, thank you for sharing with us your wisdom.
Thank you.
Thanks for personally inspiring me. I got some things to do. That's really helpful to me. Like I said, personally already, I'm thinking of things like I want to do that, and that. And I know it'll be helpful for people that are listening as well. So keep doing your good work in the world. And
thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
About the outcomes too of your pilot.
Thank you.
Thanks so
much. All right, Denise, happy holidays. Thank you.